Welcome to Nightmare Fuel Stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the stories. Number the vacant SBACES. I've always been drawn to abandoned places. There's something about the quiet decay, the stillness of rooms once filled with life that calls to me. My camera and I have explored forgotten hospitals, shuttered factories, and derelict mansions across 3 states. Urban exploration isn't just a hobby for me, it's an obsession, a way to touch history through its discarded spaces. My name is Daniel Mercer. I run a moderately successful urban exploration channel called The Vacant Spaces. Nothing huge, about 30,000 subscribers, but enough that I can almost justify the trespassing charges if I ever get caught. I've documented hundreds of locations in my 5 years of exploring, but nothing prepared me for what I found in the Blackwood building. The Blackwood was a 14-story office building in downtown Harmon City that had been empty for nearly a decade. A casualty of the 2008 financial crisis, it stood as a monument to corporate failure, its windows dark and uninviting against the city skyline. The property had been tied up in legal battles between insurance companies, the city, and various potential developers. Meanwhile, it just sat there, gathering dust and graffiti. Getting inside was surprisingly easy. The service entrance had a padlock that looked like it had been cut and replaced multiple times. Other explorers had clearly been here before me. I slipped through just after sunset on a Tuesday evening, when the surrounding businesses were closed and foot traffic was minimal. The lobby was exactly what you'd expect: broken marble floors, a security desk covered in dust, dead plants in concrete planters. I set up my camera and began my usual introduction. Hey everyone, Daniel here with another episode of The Vacant Spaces. Tonight we're exploring the Blackwood building, abandoned since 2009 and supposedly slated for demolition next year. Let's see what secrets this corporate graveyard has to offer. I made my way through the first few floors methodically, documenting the empty cubicles, conference rooms with chairs still arranged around tables, and executive offices with views of the city. It was standard fare for an abandoned office building: water damage on the ceiling tiles, peeling wallpaper, the occasional desk drawer still containing paperclips or forgotten office supplies. It wasn't until I reached the 6th floor that things began to feel off. The elevator hadn't worked, obviously, so I'd been taking the stairs. When I pushed through the stairwell door onto the 6th floor, I immediately noticed the difference. While the lower floors had been covered in a thick layer of dust, this hallway looked cleaner, not clean exactly, but as if someone had disturbed the dust recently and regularly. That's weird, I muttered to my camera. Looks like someone's been up here. I chalked it up to other urban explorers or maybe homeless people seeking shelter. It wasn't uncommon to find signs of temporary occupation in these places. Still, something about it made the hair on my arms stand up. The layout of the 6th floor was different from the others. Instead of open office space, it was divided into smaller rooms, almost like a hotel. Each door had a number: 601, 602, and so on. Most were locked or jammed shut, but 607 opened when I tried the handle. Inside was a small room with a desk, a chair, and a filing cabinet. What struck me was that the desk had a single sheet of paper on it, not yellowed or aged, but crisp and white. I approached slowly, my camera focused on the anomaly. The paper was blank. That's odd, I said to the camera. Brand new paper in a decade-old abandoned building. As I picked it up, I noticed something else. The chair was warm, not hot, but warm, as if someone had been sitting in it minutes before I arrived. I spun around, suddenly aware of how alone I was in this massive building. "Hello," I called out, instantly regretting breaking the silence. "Anyone here?" No response, just the distant sound of city traffic 14 stories below. I decided to move on, but not before checking the filing cabinet. It was locked, which was disappointing but not unusual. What was unusual was the faint humming sound coming from somewhere nearby. It wasn't mechanical like an air conditioner or generator. It sounded almost like someone humming a tune. I left room 607 quickly, my heart rate elevated. The rational part of my brain said there must be a simple explanation. Perhaps the building wasn't as abandoned as I thought. Maybe some squatters had set up here. But why would they leave just before I arrived? And why would they leave a blank piece of paper? Room 612 was next. The door was ajar, and when I pushed it open, I found something that stopped me in my tracks. Unlike the other rooms, this one was furnished, not with old, abandoned furniture, but with what appeared to be recently used items. A small cot with neatly made bedding, a hot plate on a small table, a shelf with canned foods and bottled water. "What the hell?" I whispered. "Someone's living here. I should have left then." Everything about the situation screamed danger, but curiosity, that same curiosity that had led me to explore abandoned places in the first place, pushed me forward. On the wall above the cot was a series of photographs. They were Polaroids, their colors still vibrant, showing various rooms in the building. But what made my blood run cold was that several of them showed the exact rooms I had just explored on the lower floors, from angles I hadn't stood in. In one photo of the lobby, there was a dark figure standing by the security desk, blurred as if in motion. I hadn't seen anyone when I came in. I checked the timestamp on the Polaroid. Today's date, 1 hour before I had entered the building. My hands shook as I lowered my camera. Someone had been watching me since I arrived. Someone had anticipated my path through the building and had photographed it before I even got here. That's when I heard it, footsteps in the hallway, slow and deliberate. I ducked behind the door, heart pounding in my chest. The footsteps approached room 612, then stopped directly outside. I held my breath, camera clutched to my chest, no longer concerned with documenting my exploration. The footsteps moved on, continuing down the hallway until I couldn't hear them anymore. I waited 5 minutes before peering out into the hallway. Empty. I decided it was time to leave, to forget about getting footage from the upper floors and just get out of the building. I'd make up some excuse to my viewers about equipment failure, but as I turned toward the stairwell, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Across the hall, room 613's door was wide open, and a light was on inside. Not flashlight beam or emergency lighting, but steady electric light, as if the power was working in just that room. Against my better judgment, I approached. Room 613 was an office, fully furnished and looking as if it had never been abandoned. A computer hummed on the desk, its screen showing an email client open to an inbox. A nameplate on the desk read Thomas Blackwood, Blackwood like the building itself. I'd researched this place before coming, and I knew that Blackwood Investments had been the primary tenant before the building was abandoned. Thomas Blackwood had been the CEO who had committed suicide when the company collapsed, jumping from the roof of this very building. The computer screen suddenly flashed and a new email appeared in the inbox. The subject line read, "Welcome, Daniel." My blood turned to ice. I hadn't told anyone I was coming here tonight. I hadn't even decided on exploring this building until a few hours ago. With trembling fingers, I clicked on the email. "Daniel, I've been watching your channel for some time. Your exploration of forgotten spaces is admirable but incomplete. You see the emptiness, the abandonment, but you miss what remains. We remain, those of us who cannot leave. Those of us bound to these places. Tonight, you'll understand. Room 1404, come alone." The timestamp on the email was from 3 days ago. I backed away from the computer, nearly tripping over the chair. This wasn't possible. Someone was playing an elaborate prank. Maybe a viewer had recognized me and was trying to scare me. That had to be it. But how did they know I'd choose the Blackwood tonight? How did they get power to this room? How did they know I'd come to the 6th floor to this specific room? I decided to leave immediately. Forgotten were my plans for a full exploration video. I just wanted out. I turned toward the door and found it closed. I was certain it had been open when I entered. When I tried the handle, it wouldn't budge. Locked. "Hey," I shouted, pounding on the door. "This isn't funny, let me out." No response. I tried calling for help on my phone, but there was no signal, not unusual in these old buildings with their thick concrete walls. I considered breaking the window, but at 6 stories up, that wasn't a viable escape route. As panic began to set in, the computer behind me dinged again. Another email. "Room 1404, Daniel, the only way out is up." I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Was I really being directed to the 14th floor, the top floor, where Thomas Blackwood had taken his final steps before jumping? After 20 minutes of trying to force the door open with no success, I reluctantly concluded that whoever was doing this had me trapped. If they wanted me to go to room 1404, perhaps that's where I'd find them, and a way out of this nightmare. The door to room 613 suddenly clicked and swung open on its own. The hallway beyond was dark except for a single light at the end, illuminating the stairwell door. I had little choice but to follow. As I climbed the stairs, I noticed changes in the building. The decay seemed to reverse the higher I went. The 7th floor's stairwell door had fresh paint. The 8th floor's hallway had functioning emergency lights. By the 10th floor, the carpets looked new, and the air smelled clean rather than musty. It was as if I was climbing back in time to when the building was still alive. On the 12th floor, I heard voices, muffled conversations, the clacking of keyboards, phones ringing. I pressed my ear against the stairwell door and distinctly heard an office in full swing, as if it were the middle of a busy workday rather than nearly midnight in an abandoned building. I didn't dare open that door. The 13th floor was silent again, but the stairwell leading to 14 was different. The concrete steps gave way to polished marble. Brass handrails replaced the rusted iron ones from below. It looked exactly as it might have when the building first opened, pristine and elegant. The door to the 14th floor bore a placard, Executive Level Blackwood Investments. I hesitated, my hand on the door handle. Whatever was happening defied logical explanation. Either I was losing my mind or something truly supernatural was occurring. Neither option was comforting, but I needed answers, and the only way forward was through that door. The 14th floor was immaculate. Recessed lighting illuminated a reception area with leather furniture, glass coffee tables, and modern art on the walls. A circular desk dominated the center of the room, but no receptionist was present. On the desk was a visitor's badge with my name on it, printed in crisp black letters, Daniel Mercer, expected. I picked up the badge, turning it over in my hands. This level of preparation suggested that whatever was happening had been planned well in advance. But how and by whom? A corridor led away from the reception area, with doors on either side. Each bore a nameplate for various executives of Blackwood Investments. At the end of the hall was a set of double doors with Thomas Blackwood, CEO, engraved on a gold plate. Room 1404. As I approached, I noticed my reflection in the polished brass of the door handles. I looked pale, frightened, a far cry from the confident urban explorer who had entered the building hours earlier. I knocked, not expecting an answer. "Come in, Daniel," called a voice from within. It was deep, resonant, and somehow familiar, though I couldn't place it. I pushed the doors open to reveal a spacious corner office. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Harmon City at night, lights twinkling in the darkness. A large desk faced the door, and behind it sat a man in his 60s, silver-haired and wearing an impeccable suit. "Mr. Mercer," he said, standing and extending his hand. "Thomas Blackwood. I've been looking forward to meeting you." I didn't take his hand. "This isn't possible," I said. "Thomas Blackwood died 10 years ago." The man smiled, lowering his hand. "Did I? I suppose that's what the papers reported." "Please have a seat, we have much to discuss." I remained standing. "What is this, some kind of elaborate hoax? Are you filming this for a rival channel or something?" Blackwood laughed, a sound that seemed to echo oddly in the room. "No hoax, Daniel, no cameras except your own." He gestured to my camera, which I was still clutching. "Though I doubt it's recording properly in here." I checked my camera. The screen was showing static, the recording corrupted. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Blackwood sat back down, folding his hands on the desk. "I want to show you something about these vacant spaces you're so fond of exploring." He pressed a button on his desk phone. "Marissa, bring in the portfolio, please." A moment later, a side door opened, and a woman entered carrying a leather binder. She was young, perhaps in her 20s, wearing a pencil skirt and blouse that looked straight out of 2009. She placed the binder on the desk and left without acknowledging my presence. "Do you know what happens to a place when it's abandoned, Daniel?" Blackwood asked, opening the binder. "People assume it dies. That it becomes an empty shell devoid of purpose or presence, but that's not entirely accurate." He turned the binder toward me. Inside were photographs, not of the Blackwood building, but of other locations I'd explored for my channel. The old Westmore Hospital, the Sutton Factory, the Grayson Hotel, but these photos showed something my footage never had: people. Shadowy figures standing in corners, sitting at desks, walking down hallways. Places remember Daniel. They absorb the energy, the emotions, the very essence of those who inhabited them. And sometimes, when that energy is particularly strong, say, during a moment of extreme distress or tragedy, it creates something more permanent. I stared at the photos, recognizing locations I'd visited but not the people in them. "Ghosts?" I asked skeptically, though my experiences tonight made it hard to maintain disbelief. "In a manner of speaking," Blackwood replied, "though I prefer to think of us as echoes. Impressions left on the fabric of a place." "Us," I repeated. Blackwood smiled again, but this time there was something wrong with the expression. It stretched too wide, revealing too many teeth. "Why do you think these buildings call to you, Daniel? Why do you think you feel such a connection to abandoned places? You're sensitive to the echoes. You can almost hear us, almost see us. We've been watching you for years, moving just out of frame of your camera, staying just beyond your peripheral vision." My mouth went dry. "What do you want from me?" "To join us, of course." Blackwood stood again, but his movement was wrong, jerky, as if he were being pulled by invisible strings. "The Blackwood building is scheduled for demolition next month. We need a new anchor, someone with a strong connection to the building to ensure we persist beyond its physical form. Someone like you." I backed toward the door. "I'm not staying here. I'm leaving now." Blackwood's face changed, the flesh seeming to sag and then tighten in unnatural ways. "I'm afraid that's not an option, Daniel. You've already been here too long. Check your watch." I glanced at my wrist. My watch showed 3:17 a.m. I had entered the building around 8 p.m. Where had the time gone? "Time moves differently here," Blackwood explained, coming around the desk. "Especially for those who are transitioning." The room began to change around me. The pristine office flickered, momentarily revealing a decayed, abandoned space before snapping back to its immaculate condition. The same happened to Blackwood himself. For a split second, he appeared as a desiccated corpse in a rotting suit before returning to his polished appearance. "What's happening to me?" I gasped, feeling a strange lightness, as if I were becoming untethered from reality. "You're becoming part of the building, Daniel, part of us. It happens to all who stay too long. Why do you think these places are truly abandoned? It's not just economic factors or changing neighborhoods. People sense what happens here. They stay away instinctively." I lunged for the door, but my hand passed through the handle as if it were made of smoke. I tried again with the same result. "Don't fight it," Blackwood advised, his voice now coming from all around me rather than from his physical form. "It's easier if you accept it. You'll still be able to explore after all. All these vacant spaces will be open to you. You just won't be able to leave them." Horror washed over me as I realized what was happening. I wasn't being haunted, I was becoming a haunting. "No," I shouted, throwing myself at the door repeatedly, each time passing through it partially before being pulled back into the room. Blackwood watched with something like pity in his eyes. "It won't be so bad, Daniel. You'll have company. All those buildings you've explored, they're waiting for you to return. They remember you." The room flickered more violently now, reality seeming to strobe between the pristine office of 2009 and the decayed, abandoned space of 2019. Each time it changed, I felt myself becoming less substantial, less present. In desperation, I ran toward the windows, intending to break through, but as I approached, the city view changed. Instead of the Harmon City skyline, I saw other locations: the interior of Westmore Hospital, the machinery floor of Sutton Factory, the grand lobby of the Grayson Hotel. All places I had explored, all seemingly connected now through some impossible dimensional space. "You see," Blackwood said, his voice now echoing as if from a great distance, "all vacant spaces are connected in the in-between. And now you're part of that network." I turned back to him, but he was gone. In his place stood dozens of figures, translucent, shifting forms that I recognized with horror as people I had glimpsed in my peripheral vision during previous explorations. Faces that had appeared for a frame or two in my footage, dismissed as camera glitches or tricks of light. They had been real, they had been like Blackwood, and now they were like me. "Welcome home, Daniel," they said in unison, their voices a discordant chorus. I felt the last of my substance fading, my connection to physical reality unraveling. With my final moments of clarity, I understood the truth of abandoned places. They're never truly empty. They're filled with those who couldn't leave, those who became part of the very walls and floors and ceilings. My body dissolved into the fabric of the Blackwood building, my consciousness spreading throughout its empty corridors and vacant rooms. I became aware of others like me, dozens of them trapped between existence and non-existence, bound to the structure. And I understood something else. My camera was still there, still recording, though I no longer had hands to hold it. Someone would find it eventually. Another urban explorer, perhaps, drawn to the Blackwood building by the same inexplicable pull that had brought me here. They would find my footage, corrupted and strange, but enough to bring them searching for answers. Enough to bring them to room 1404, and the cycle would continue. Now, as I drift through the vacant spaces between worlds, I watch the living explore what they think are empty buildings. I see them shiver when they feel a cold spot, see them squint at their footage when a shadow moves independently or a door closes on its own. I try to warn them, I try to make them understand. But all they hear is the settling of an old building. All they see is a dust mote catching the light. All they feel is a momentary chill that makes them zip their jackets tighter. They don't realize that we're here, watching, waiting for them to stay too long, to become like us. So if you're watching this footage, if you found my camera in the ruins of the Blackwood building, heed my warning. The vacant spaces are never truly vacant, and if you explore them long enough, eventually you'll become part of them, just as I did, just as you will.